Mitchell, Monning, Morrell, Nestande, Nielsen, Norby, Olson, Pan, Perea, V. Manuel Perez, Portantino, Silva, Skinner, Smythe, Solorio, Swanson, Torres, Valadeo, Wagner, Wykowski, Williams, Yamada, Mr. Speaker.
A quorum is present. We ask our guests and visitors in the rear of the chamber and in the gallery to please stand for the prayer. We ask Assembly Member Silva to offer the day's prayer.
Please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask you to guide us this day that we might fill our hearts and minds with wisdom and courage, the courage to do what we know is right and the wisdom to know when we are wrong. Help us find peace of mind and give us a contented heart. Grant this, we pray. Amen.
We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing and join us for the flag salute. Please join Assembly Member Dickinson as he leads us in the pledge. Mr. Dickinson. You may be seated. Reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Thursday, March 24, 2011. Assembly at 1 p.m. Honorable Fiona Ma, Speaker Pro Tem of the Assembly, presiding. Chief Clerk E. Dotson Wilson at the desk. Reading Clerk Timothy Moreland reading. The roll was called. Ashajian, Alejo, Allen, Amiano, Atkins, Bell, Berryhill, Block, Blumenfield, Bonilla, Bradford, Brownlee, Buchanan, Butler, Calderon, Campos, Carter, Cedillo, Chesbro, Conway, Cook, Davis, Dickinson, Donnelly, Ing, Fier, Fletcher, Fong, Fuentes, Furtani, Galgiani, Garrett, Gatto, Gordon,
Mr. Calderon moves and Mr. Hagman seconds that the reading of the previous day's journal be dispensed with. Presentations of petitions, there are none. Introduction and reference of bills will be deferred. Reports of committees will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Messages from the governor, there are none. Messages from the Senate, there are none. Motions and resolutions. The absences for the day will be deemed read and printed in the journal. Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker, members, I request unanimous consent to suspend the Assembly rules, allow members Wesso and the Speaker, also Mr. Hagman and Mr. Williams to have guests and photographers on the floor.
Without objection.
Also request unanimous consent to suspend the rules, allow Assembly members Hagman and Lowenthal to speak on adjourn in memory.
Without objection.
On committee-to-committee re-referrals pursuant to Rule 96, request unanimous consent to refer the following bills to committee. AB 74 by Ms. Ma from the Public Safety Committee to the Rules Committee.
Without objection.
All right, we'll take each one individually. Okay. AB 436 by Mr. Solorio from the Insurance Committee to the Rules Committee.
Without objection.
AB 813 by Mr. Fletcher from the Governmental Organization and Public Safety Committees to the Public Safety and Judiciary Committees.
Without objection.
AB 1016 by Mr. Hakharian from the Local Government Committee to the Rules Committee.
Without objection.
AB 1326 by Mr. Furutani from the Education Committee to the Rules Committee.
Without objection. Mr. Hagman, would you like to introduce your guest?
Am I on? Oh, thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, my daughter makes an appearance again today. Elizabeth Hagman, she came up for her 4th grade class yesterday for the Capitol Tour, and you can imagine the weather and the rain and the wind, how they had fun at Sutter's Fort and mining for gold and all those fun things. But Elizabeth Hagman is here again today. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, today marks the 25th anniversary of the California Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom. I'm delighted to present this resolution to Judy Culbertson, Executive Director of the Foundation. We also have Board Chairman Kenny Watkins, Board members Jamie Johansson and Craig Thompson, and Foundation staff members Kelly Bernarth, Stephanie Echeverria, and Jenna Swenson. Agriculture is clearly one of California's most vital industries, and agriculture has figured prominently throughout California's history and culture. The California Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom aims to educate students about the importance of agriculture to life in our state, as well as to foster an appreciation for agriculture throughout California. More than 2 million Californians are directly employed by the agriculture industry, and millions more are employed indirectly thanks to the leading California industry. The Foundation provides a wide array of resources to help schools and teachers incorporate agriculture in the classroom. They also provide free training for educators, as well as programs that actively bring agriculture in the classroom through school gardens, providing a rich, well-rounded approach that integrates many fields of study. Please join me in congratulating the the California Foundation for Agriculture in the Classroom on 25 years of excellence.
Business on the daily file, second reading. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 159, 169 with amendments, 180 with amendments, 25 with amendments, 699 with amendments, 337 with amendments, and Assembly Bill 606 with amendments.
All bills will be deemed read and amendments deemed adopted. Okay, members, we're going to go to business on the daily file, third reading. We're going to go out of order because some members are not here yet. So we're going to go file item 18, ACR 38. Clerk will read.
Assembly concurrent resolution 38 by Assemblymember Bonnie Lowenthal relative to the Joint Legislative Committee on Emergency Management.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. ACR 38 continues the existence of the Joint Legislative Committee on Emergency Management. This joint committee has, for several sessions, been the legislature's tool for dealing with the kind of issues that were so dramatically called to light in the wake of the Japanese earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear emergency. It is a coincidence of timing that we are reforming this committee now, following that tragedy. But the situation in Japan does underscore the need for our body to be responsive and proactive to emergency management concerns. In the past, the resolutions reestablishing the Joint Committee have passed through both houses without a single dissenting vote, and I ask for your aye vote today. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, we could take a roll call on this item. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The measure is adopted. File item 20, ACR 25. Clerk will read.
Assembly concurrent resolution 25 by Assemblymember Campos relative to arts education.
Ms. Campos.
Good morning, Madam Speaker and members. Today I am presenting ACR 25, which declares March as Arts Education Month. Arts education in California is mandated for pupils in grades 1 through 12 by the California Education Code. Because the arts facilitate learning in the areas of cultural understanding, readiness for learning and creative thinking, social interaction and collaboration, and preparation for the workplace and lifelong learning. Studies have shown that students' attendance, performance, and dropout rates improve when students are enrolled in arts education courses, especially for at-risk students. And education in the arts helps to develop spatial and critical thinking, which are imperative in the new global economy. ACR 25 will declare March 2011 Arts Education Month, and in doing so, California will recognize the arts as a necessary and important part of a quality education. This resolution encourages public support for the arts education and helps to ensure that each pupil in California receives a well-rounded education. I would like to request that the first row be open for co-authors. I thank you and respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Harkey.
I, too, stand in support of this resolution. I thank my fellow member for bringing it up, Madam Speaker. I was one of those kids that could have been a problem child in my teen years. I had a lot of activities going on, and I didn't need to study very hard. I had a lot of spare time, and I had an attitude at about 15, and I had an absolutely fabulous drama teacher who decided I took drama just kind of Phil, and he decided to star me because I was having such an attitude. He made me star of a play, and quite honestly, that turned me around. It got me more involved in school, more involved in activities. It was extremely helpful for me. I also had another teacher in journalism that did the same thing. I ended up graduating at 17 to go out and work full time. That was the nature of my family. But that being said, those are two teachers that I will never forget. With all of my business classes and my backgrounds that I had and my more firm curriculum, those were two teachers I will never forget, and they made a real impact on my life. So I tell you that this is very important for children, all walks of life, and I strongly support the ACR. Thank you.
Mr. Nielsen.
Madam Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, I too would rise in support as an avid art aficionado and collector within our modest means, and also one who has seen within the prison system the value of arts education and its impact on changing criminal behavior, particularly when it does occur early on. Over the years, for many, many reasons in public education, the importance of arts, I would argue, has been greatly diminished and set aside. I would argue it is very important. Urge an aye vote.
Ms. Skinner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Ms. Campos, I'm not sure, but is this your first bill? You know, there's a lot of different definitions of art, and I want to really make sure that the legislation that you are submitting, in fact, is beneficial for art that, you know, that is art that we would all feel comfortable with. Could you speak to that, please?
Thank you for the question. I would concur that this bill coming forward would be a broad bill that would include all aspects of art, whether it's theater, whether it's creative drawing, or whether it's graffiti. So with that, I ask for your aye vote.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you. Question of the author?
Without objection.
Ms. Campos, I just want to know, does that include the art of politics?
One of the most interesting parts about this bill that politics is a form of arts.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Ms. Campos asks for the first roll to be open for co-authors. First roll to be open for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. This is for co-authors, members, co-authors. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. For the record, there are 61 co-authors. We could take a voice vote on this item. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The measure is adopted. File item 23, ACR 22. Clerk will read.
Assembly concur in Resolution 23 by Assembly Member Hueso, an act relative to California School Bullying Prevention Awareness Month.
Mr. Hueso.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and colleagues. Assembly Concurrent Resolution 22 declares the month of March 2011 to be California School Bullying Prevention Awareness Week month, and urges school district to discuss the issue of bullying and methods of preventing it in California schools. Too many children and families have been adversely affected by the impacts of bullying. Families are losing their children. Children are losing their self-respect and self-worth, and schools are missing out when an estimated 8% of the pupils in kindergarten through 12th grade miss at least one day of school every month due to the fear of being bullied. Bullying is a serious and growing concern which can lead to depression, anxiety, and criminal behavior. We as adults and as leaders of this great state have the responsibility to protect our children, and since we cannot be everywhere, we must teach them, instruct them, and empower them to keep them from being the targets of bullying by bystanders of this, and to be bystanders of this destructive behavior. In a few moments, I will be recognizing students and representatives from El Toyon Elementary from my district in honor of this presentation, who have dedicated themselves to eliminating bullying in their schools. I know that there are several schools and programs throughout the state that are already actively engaged in bullying prevention efforts. However, today I encourage the rest of the schools in our state to establish a curriculum and training so that all students can learn to identify the different types of bullying, which can be physical, verbal, psychological, and can even be extended through electronic media. I ask you today to join me in recognizing March as Anti-Bullying Prevention Month and encourage our California schools to cultivate positive behaviors that can create a bully-free learning environment.
Mr. Norby.
I understand and sympathize with the purpose of this, Madam Speaker, but I think it's cheap grace when we focus on school bullying and don't include the legislature or business or other things throughout our state. State law is a blunt instrument when it applies to relationships and playground behavior. I've seen bullying programs in my district that I have serious questions about, and some of which might go directly against the advice I'd give my own son as to how to behave on the playground. And when we expand this into verbal and psychological bullying, it indeed is a slippery slope to micromanage anything that a person might use to persuade another person. Bullying, in fact, may be in the eye of the beholder. We have a whole list of resolutions here on reading, Earl Warren, scientists, arts, bullying. About 1 in 4 of what we're voting on today has to do with these non-binding resolutions. And I just think we ought to see something more substantive before we go forward with this. I'd like to see bullying actually defined in some meaningful way. I won't be voting for any of these or this either.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank Mr. Wesso for bringing this forward. I also want to recognize Michelle Molina from Long Beach, who is the president of the Peace Builders chapter in that city and has done a phenomenal amount of work to protect our young people and to help people better work with each other, starting from the youngest of children in school. So I think this is a very important resolution, and I'm very supportive. Thank you, Mr. Wesso.
Ms. Huber.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With all due respect to my colleague, I absolutely think it is appropriate that on this floor we bring attention to the issue of bullying. As a mother with a first grader and a third grader, I have personally felt the pain of my children being bullied at school. When my son with autism was told by a group of bullies that if he didn't lick the toilet in school, they were all going to put a curse on him. This is the kind of behaviors that are happening in our schools, and I think it is absolutely appropriate for us as a legislature to bring awareness to the issue of bullying in school, and I applaud the children who are here today who have pledged to be part of the solution, and I absolutely urge your aye vote.
No clapping, members. Mr. Hall.
Yes, I would like to thank the member for bringing this resolution forward. We have been trying in the Assembly to address this issue for the last 2 years. And as you know, you've read many articles in the newspaper and seen and watched many news reports of the issue of bullying taking effect and taking place in our community and our country across these great United States. People committing suicide because of such bullying, cyberbullying, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I want to thank the author for this resolution. And perhaps, you know, some people, maybe this floor or other floors in many other assemblies, may not understand the importance of supporting kids. And this is not about what you believe. This is about the reality of what is. Supporting kids and making sure that we create safe havens for them to be able to matriculate on their campuses. And so I'm very honored to be able to support this resolution and ask for some of my seniors, my senior elder members, to be able to just visit a playground every once in a while, and so that we can stay in touch with the reality of what's really happening on our campuses. Our kids are hurting, and it's about time that we start supporting them. I thank you for the resolution.
Mr. Calderon.
I think this measure is going to pass, but I just wanted to raise a few issues within the consciousness of this House. There was a recent poll that was reported on MSNBC. It was a national poll, and over 90% of the people in this country or 90% of the people polled said they had been bullied at some time in their life. This is a phenomenon that appears to be increasing because we are losing our tolerance. And without a tolerance, there cannot be a social contract. Without a social contract, there cannot be democracy. With the cuts that we make every year from public safety and law enforcement, we need to get the public involved and aware that they have a responsibility too, and they can help. They have the ability in and of themselves to do something about one problem, and then the next, and so on. These children are learning that now. Schools used to teach good citizenship. I think they try. But we put all kinds of restrictions on them to teach to the test. And that citizenship tends to, I think, suffer. So when there are groups that are willing and children that want to learn, that want to be good citizens, that want to be good people, that want to live with everyone else, irrespective of their differences, it's important for us to recognize that on this floor. We certainly do that for the State Rock or Golf Day or many of the other resolutions that I would have rather not come before this House. But certainly this is one that is truly worthy, and I ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Portantino.
Yes, Madam Speaker and members, I rise to echo the comments of Mr. Calderon. There has been an increased awareness of bullying, and as a father of 2 kids, I certainly concur that there's been an increase in bullying and would urge people to support this measure.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Hueso, you may close.
I just like to thank my colleagues and supporters of this resolution for their comments, and I respectfully ask for an aye vote on this important resolution, and I ask that the first roll be open for co-authors. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Mr. Hueso is asking that the first roll be open for co-authors. First roll open for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. This is for co-authors, members. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. For the record, there are 63 co-authors. We can take a voice vote on this item. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The measure is adopted. And Mr. Hueso has some guests. Please direct your attention to Mr. Hueso. Mr. Hueso.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank my colleagues again for your support. In addition, I'd like you to join me in welcoming Michelle Molina of Peace Builders, Manuel Machado, the principal of El Toyon Elementary, and Lisa Tostado, the counselor at El Toyon Elementary. We also have students that have come up to hear this resolution. They are from El Toyon Elementary, a school located in my district in the beautiful city of National City. I want to recognize them for all their work and efforts in promoting awareness of bullying and combating this problem with in-depth instruction of kindness, communication, cooperation, friendship, and empathy for all the students. The children go around the school and they work with their fellow students to prevent bullying. When they see an incident of where kids aren't getting along, they intervene and they talk the students out of that tense situation. So they're learning how to mediate, and they're learning how to build peace in the schools. And I just want to welcome them here, and I hope you can join me and welcome them.
We have some more students here. Mr. Bell.
Madam Speaker and members, we have a large group of program from the Oak Grove School District. It's called the Indigo Program. It's a unique parent participation elementary and middle school special option school in the Oak Grove School District. And I'm sure they really enjoyed the last discussion, and I'd like to welcome them to the State Assembly chambers.
Okay, members, we're going to go back to file item 13, H.R. 10. Clerk will read.
House Resolution 10 by Assemblymember Hayashi relative to Chief Justice Earl Warren Day.
Ms. Hayashi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I am pleased to present H.R. 10 designating March 19, 2011 and each March 19th thereafter as Chief Justice Earl Warren Day. Earl Warren is best known for writing landmark opinion in Brown versus Board of Education, striking down segregation and forever changing the course of our country. But Earl Warren meant even more for California. As Attorney General and as three-time Governor of California, he lived a life of service dedicated to reform and to justice. Earl Warren was born on March 19, 1891 in Los Angeles and was a worker from the time he was in grade school. He delivered newspapers, groceries, and blocks of ice, and his teenage years worked 12-hour days and 6 days a week on the railroads. From this hard working class background, he would go on to become Oakland's Deputy City Attorney, then Deputy District Attorney of Alameda County, then Alameda County District Attorney, where he served for 14 years. He has led a stellar career of cleaning up corruption that won him great distinction and fame, and he was once called the best district attorney in the United States. His path of success soon led him to be the State Attorney General of California, then governor, where he continued to make progressive changes and modern reform. He has constructed more schools and hospitals than any governor in the United States history, obtained more beaches and parks, and established child care centers for employed mothers. Likely inspired by his own working class roots, he championed working families, calling for the creation of the Fair Employment Practices Commission, and helped establish legal aid associations. In 1953, he was called to the United States Supreme Court by President Eisenhower, and the rest, as they say, is history. In living this accomplished life, he never lost sight of his purpose or misused his fame. He lived simply and never lost touch with the public and the dreams of the common man and woman. By creating Chief Justice Earl Warren Day, we hope that many more Californians will aspire to be as great in spirit, if not indeed, as this inspirational American leader. I'd like to recognize Assemblymember Sondre Swanson for joint authoring H.R. 10 and invite all of you to co-author this important resolution honoring Earl Warren and declaring March 19th as Chief Justice Earl Warren Day. Madam Speaker, at this time I'd like to ask that first row be open for co-authors.
Mr. Norby.
We continue to spend a great deal of time on things that are, in my view, insubstantive and will have no real effect on our constituents. But if we're going to spend this kind of time talking about history and historical figures, we need to have some balance. All people are a combination of good and bad, including all of us here. Earl Warren was as well. He did sign the Japanese relocation in World War II, forcing about 110,000 people to leave their homes and relocate. He did it for reasons which he thought were right at the time and later may have regretted those, but I think we need to look at the entire life of a person rather than just a hagiography.
Without further questions or debate, Ms. Hayashi, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I respectfully request an aye vote, please.
Ms. Hayashi is asking for the first roll to be open for co-authors. First roll to be open for co-authors. Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. This is for co-authors, members. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. For the record, there are 58 co-authors. We could take a roll call item on this vote. All those in favor say, a voice vote on this item. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The measure is adopted. File item 14, AB 177. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 177 by Assemblymember Mendoza, an act relating to juveniles.
Mr. Mendoza.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Members, I'm here to present AB 177. AB 177 simply clarifies the intent of AB 1291, which is the Parental Accountability Act that was signed into law in 2007. AB 177 will give judges more discretion to assign anti-gang parenting classes to parents of minors for first-time offenses that indicate gang involvement or will lead into future gang involvement. According to the National Gang Center, juvenile delinquency is a precursor behavior to gang membership. Virtually all youth who have joined a gang have prior delinquency involvement. So please, members, I respectfully ask for your aye vote and support of this measure. Thank you.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Aye 66, no 0. Measure passes. Okay, we will recess the regular session for the purpose of convening the first extraordinary session. We are in the first extraordinary session. Without objection, we will substitute the prayer pledge, other opening procedures in the regular session for those items in the first extraordinary session. First item, file item 1, ABX 114. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 14 by Assemblymember Skinner and others, an act relating to energy and making an appropriation therefore.
Ms. Skinner.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, the bill before us today is the successor to a program that the legislature enacted last year. Last year's program was called PACE. And what the PACE program did was create loans that would have been paid via property tax assessments for homeowners or commercial property owners who wanted to have these long-term low-interest loans to be able to do energy efficiency upgrades to their property. The energy efficiency upgrade could have included water efficiency improvements, solar installation, any variety of things that actually reduced the utility demand on the property and thus saved the whoever was the utility ratepayer of the property, whether it was a commercial business or a resident, a great deal of money because their utility bills would have been reduced. The other benefit of the program, of course, is that it would put back to work many of our people in the trades, whether they be installers of HVAC systems or insulation or window upgrades or that sort of thing. So the program unfortunately hit a snag because with the mortgage crisis, our Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac felt that such loans might be considered a second on the mortgages, and with the fragility of the credit market and the mortgage markets, they felt it was not the time to do such a program through property tax assessments. So what we did was we went back and asked the Treasurer's Office to work with us to see if we could design a program where the private sector, meaning our private sector lending institutions like banks, would be willing to put forward these loans. So that's what we have before you now. It's essentially the same program, but is going to be administered by the Treasurer's Office in partnership with private sector banks. And we have a number of private sector banks, just for example, the Matadors Community Credit Union of Chatsworth has signed on. The Rabobank, which has 120 branches and 15 financial service centers in California, from the Imperial Valley to Redding. That's just an example of some of the private sector banks who've signed up now to be part of this program. So we would have the same mechanism of our renewable trust fund being the assurance for the private sector entities that these loans will be good. The private sector banks will then make the loans available to our small property owners, and we would be able to get this program back on the street. So that's the program, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Blumenfield.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I rise in support of this important measure. Don't let Mother Nature fool you. We've had a lot of rain these last few days, but we still need water conservation. We have a major water problem, and I want to thank Assemblywoman Skinner for making it clear that this bill not only includes solar, but includes water conservation, because I have a bill that was signed into law last year that allows for this kind of loan program to be done with water conservation, but it was reliant upon the PACE loans. And unfortunately, those PACE loans got stalled. But with this bill, the measure that we enacted into law last year will be able to move forward, and will be able to do a tremendous amount in the area of water conservation by leveraging scarce dollars and moving us forward. So thank you, Assemblywoman Skinner, for this bill, and I urge your aye vote.
Mr. Chesbro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of this bill. Last year, when the PACE program was just getting off the ground, Sonoma County, in my district and Mr. Allen's district, was one of the first counties to move to get this program in place. And I had the privilege of going to a kickoff event where, and I'm not exaggerating, literally hundreds of building contractors are in this room jumping out of their chairs and with excitement and enthusiasm for the opportunity to put people back to work. Because these are people who've been stalled by the economy, who've been unable to build homes, build new commercial buildings, and this program offered an opportunity for them to rehire people and put them to work, retrofitting and installing energy devices and water conservation devices. And so this is about jobs. This is an opportunity in this seemingly dead-in-the-water, stalled economy to put working people back to work, doing important work that's going to help our state in the future. I urge your aye vote. It's very important that we pass this measure today and get it to the governor and get it in place so that we can get back that momentum and that enthusiasm in our building construction industry for moving our state forward in energy and water efficiency and conservation. Thank you.
Mr. Smythe.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. And not to belabor the points that our colleagues have said, I just want to reiterate that this funding is already available, and it's waiting for us to and others to be able to access it. And that's really what this bill is doing. Is because, as the author said, it got hung up last year. Businesses and others weren't able to tap the funds this year. This bill helps clean that up so that we can get the money to the contractors, as stated, and on the streets where it belongs, so that we can help just a little bit to get the economy going. So I too ask for an aye vote.
Mr. Allen.
Madam Speaker, fellow members, Sonoma County began its program 3 years ago with the Energy Independence Program. The PACE program has been a huge success in Sonoma County. I know that in my district, both Napa, portions of Solano County are very anxious to implement. This bill is about jobs. It's about preservation of the environment. There's nothing but positives as far as I'm concerned with this bill. I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I rise in opposition to this bill. While I think it's an important goal to have energy efficiency and water conservation, and I completely concur with my colleague here talking about jobs, I'm deeply concerned after the housing crash that we're going to induce homeowners to borrow money against a shrinking pool of equity. And I think we should take a serious look at perhaps other ways to achieve this with actually using market, the economy, I mean the economics of the market, and let the free market prevail instead of government constantly coming in here and saying, hey, we know how to create jobs. I think it's a flawed premise to believe that the government can do what the private sector can do 10 times better. The government can create jobs at a great cost, but those are essentially subsidized jobs, and we don't have the money to subsidize them, and we're asking people to borrow against their most valuable asset, their home. And I urge caution here, and I urge a no vote. Thank you.
Mr. Williams.
Well, I can tell you the problem in the private sector is the difficulty to access capital to do this kind of work. And I think the importance of this is not just in the residential sector, it's in the small commercial sector. And that there are many small business owners in Santa Barbara and Ventura counties that have been waiting to be able to access these funds because they know if they can get a loan at a decent interest rate that they can immediately get a payback for doing energy efficiency and solar work. So I want to urge this body, especially those that are concerned about small business and the ability of small business to be able to access capital to support this measure. Thank you.
Mr. Dickinson.
I also rise, thank you, in support of this bill. Sacramento County, along with counties all over the state of California last year, were on the cusp of introducing the PACE program and had set aside resources to do just that when Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac torpedoed the program. This is a program that will save us energy, create jobs, and pay for itself. But it has to have the support of the money to initiate it, and I want to thank the author for making this kind of change in the approach so that we know that our biggest source of energy can be realized, and that's conservation. I ask for an aye vote.
Seeing no further questions or debate, Ms. Skinner, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, I think we've had a very good discussion of the policy, and I respectfully ask for your support.
Clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 55, noes 12. Measure passes. File item 2, ABX 115. Clerk will read.
Assembly Bill 15 by Assemblymember Hill, an act relating to taxation, declaring the urgency thereof to take effect immediately.
Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This bill has to do with solar energy systems in the state. This bill clarifies the legislature's intent regarding the current exclusion from property tax reassessment for purchases of new active solar energy systems that are sold in the sale-leaseback arrangements. Since the passage of Proposition 7 in November of 1980 and the implementing state statute contained in Revenue and Taxation Code 73, California has established a limited tax benefit for the purchasers of new active energy solar systems. The purchaser of a new solar energy system benefits because his or her property is not reassessed to increase its assessed value to take into account the value of the active solar energy system. This exclusion benefits only the property owner that purchases the solar energy system. When the property owner later sells his or her property, the property may be reassessed at that time to reflect the entire sale price, including the increased value from the active solar energy system. I've recently learned that the Board of Equalization might now have a different interpretation of the tax code impacting projects that are financed using sale-leaseback arrangements. My bill is necessary to address the BOE's interpretation of the tax code and make it crystal clear that existing laws for solar projects to continue to receive the tax assessment exclusion. Currently, assessors from around the state have been interpreting the statute consistent with what we are saying here today, and BOE Chairman Jerome Horton supports this clarification. This is critical to the thousands of solar projects and companies in the state who need certainty as they decide to grow their businesses and create jobs. I introduced this bill in the special session with an urgency clause to ensure that California can continue to retain and recruit thousands of green jobs related to solar installation and maintenance, which will benefit the economy and help address the state's budget crisis. I respectfully ask for your aye votes, members.
Seeing no further questions or debate, clerk will open the roll. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 70, no 0 on the urgency. Ayes 70, no 0 on the measure. Measure passes. File item 3, SBX1, 1 on the amendments. Clerk will read.
Senate Bill 1 with amendments by Assemblymember Solorio.
Mr. Solorio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I ask for your aye vote on amendments at the desk for Senator Steinberg's SB1 in the first extraordinary session. These amendments are technical in nature and clarify the range of special funds at the Energy Commission that would be considered for later appropriation to support the education bill in this bill, the education program in this bill. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Hagman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, we respectfully oppose the adoption of these amendments and ask for a roll call vote.
Mr. Hagman has requested a roll call vote on the amendments. Roll call vote on the amendments. Clerk will open the roll on the amendments. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. This is the majority of those present and voting. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 48, noes 22. The amendments are adopted, out to print, and back on file. The first extraordinary session is recessed upon call of the Speaker. We are back in the regular session. We're going to go back to motions and resolutions and announcements. Mr. Donnelly.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to wish my colleague, my seatmate, a happy birthday. He has aged better than I. He and I do war in the public forum, but I've been tearing my hair out, and he has a lot more hair than I do, and I just wanted to wish him a happy birthday and say that it's an honor to have him as a seatmate.
Mr. Calderon.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I request unanimous consent to suspend the rules to allow Mr. Amiano, Mr. Perez, and Mr. Chesbro to speak on adjourned memory.
Without objection. Okay, I forgot to do the consent calendar. We are at the second-day consent calendar. Does any member wish to remove an item from the second-day consent calendar? Seeing and hearing none, the clerk will read.
Assembly concurrent Resolution 29 by Assemblymember Bonilla relative to Teen Dating Violence Awareness and Prevention Month.
Clerk will open the roll on the consent calendar. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. This is on the consent calendar. Clerk will close the roll, tally the votes. Ayes 68, no 0. The consent calendar is adopted.
Assembly Bill 354.
Ayes 68, no 0.
Assembly Bill 349.
Ayes 68, no 0.
Assembly Bill 454.
Ayes 68, no 0.
And Assembly Bill 681.
Ayes 68, no 0. Okay, we're going to go to a request for adjourn in memory. The following members were recognized to present a request in memory. Assembly members Hagman, Lowenthal, Chesbro, Amiano, and Perez. Mr. Hagman.
Thank you again, Madam Speaker. And members, I rise today in adjourn in memory of Sheriff Ranger Bill Betterly of Apple Valley, who passed away on Saturday, March 12, 2011. He was born in Pine Nut in 1924. His grandfather is one of the county's historical pioneers and cattle ranchers. Bill joined the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department as Sheriff Ranger in 1946 and was sworn in by Sheriff Emmett Shea. He held the record as the longest continuous reserve deputy sheriff in the history of the county, serving as the county 64 of his 86 years. He continued to be an active ranger and sheriff coroner advisory committee member up until his death. Bill led the service community and was active in a variety of services. He was a U.S. Army Air Force pilot and a captain during World War II. After the war, continued to serve in the military for 20 years as a reservist. He was elected to the County Board of Supervisors from 1968 to 1972, representing the 1st District. In addition, Bill served on many boards and commissions throughout the years, offering his experience on a wide range of issues. In April 2010, Bill was awarded with the Arrowhead Award by Sheriff Gary Penrod during the Exceptional Services Awards, which is the highest award given by the Sheriff's Department. Bill is survived by his wife, Evelyn, his son and 2 daughters, 5 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. He'd be dearly missed and never forgotten. Therefore, today I ask for the Assembly adjourns in memory of Bill Betterly. Thank you very much.
Ms. Lowenthal.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I thank you for extending the honor of a memorial adjournment to Mark Bixby, Jeffrey Berger, and Tom Dean, prominent Long Beachers whose young lives ended suddenly and tragically when their small plane crashed at Long Beach Airport. Mark Bixby, the scion of one of Long Beach's founding families, was a leader and civic participant whose tireless efforts to improve lives of individuals and the community as a whole always exceeded even the high expectations of his heritage. Mark is survived not only by his wife, children, mother, and siblings, but by the many civic organizations that thrived thanks to his generosity, his energy, and his support. He was a president of the Rotary, a graduate of Leadership Long Beach, a board member of the YMCA and the Downtown Long Beach Associates. He spearheaded several YMCA construction projects and worked tirelessly in support of the nonprofit Children Today, which was co-founded by his wife, Teresa. Likewise, Jeffrey Berger and Tom Dean excelled in civic life and business efforts. They were the exact people on whom we've relied to create jobs and prosperity in Long Beach and all of California. The outpouring of grief for all these losses in Long Beach has been intense, and it is appropriate that we adjourn today in their honor. Thank you.
Mr. Furtani.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Members, I want to thank Assemblywoman Lowenthal for bringing this forward. I unfortunately did not know these individuals personally, but as someone that also represents parts of Long Beach, these individuals' contributions to the community are seen everywhere and in every possible area in that city. The city has been mourning these young individuals and their leadership, and they will be dearly lost and forgotten, and we really appreciate this adjourn in memory. Thank you.
Mr. Chesbro.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to ask that we adjourn in memory of a young man named Dustin Weber. And the reason I'm bringing him forward is he got worldwide attention a few weeks ago as the one California casualty that resulted from the tsunami that struck California. And the headlines oftentimes, as you know, don't tell the whole story. And I think we all, including me, were guilty of immediately casting judgment and assuming that this was a foolish act of an irresponsible young man, and maybe he even deserved what happened to him. And it turns out, as usual, there's more to the story than immediately was apparent. This was a young man who was a member of the Yurok tribe, who had spent his entire life away from the tribe, and had just moved back to the reservation and was getting to know his extended family. His grandmother was rebuilding a 100-year-old family home on the reservation, and was re-engaging with his heritage and who he was. He may or may not have been foolish in terms of where he was that took the wave away, but he was a human being, and the story struck me as a reminder of how important it is for us to have compassion and not jump to conclusions about people. I was very touched by his story. I was touched by the impact that his loss had on his family and on his tribe. And so I thought it was important to, for the record, recognize his humanity, the tragedy of his loss, and the loss to his family. And so therefore I ask you to join me in adjourning in his memory and respect his contribution in his life. Thank you very much.
Mr. V. Emanuel Perez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members,
I rise today to adjourn in memory of a fallen police officer who served the people of the 8th Assembly District. Officer Jermaine Anthony Gibson was killed in the line of duty 1 week ago. A Cathedral City police officer, Officer Gibson lost control of his patrol car and crashed during a high-speed pursuit of 2 individuals in a stolen vehicle. This young officer was only 29 years old. Just 5 weeks ago, he and his wife, Jessica, celebrated the birth of their first child, Jermaine Jr. Though he served in a Cathedral City Police Department, Officer Gibson lived with his family in Beaumont, located in Mr. Cook's district. Officer Gibson was a former U.S. Marine, having enlisted in 2003 and served 2 tours of duty in Iraq. He was awarded the Purple Heart, among other decorations. He returned to civilian life in 2007 and soon after joined the Rialto Police Department, where he served faithfully for 2 years. He joined the Cathedral City Police Department in August of 2009. Among those left to mourn him are his wife, Jessica, and their 5-week-old boy, Jermaine Jr., as well as his mother, Cheryl, his father, Larry, his brother, Taureen, and his uncle, Terry, who was like a father to him. As we take this brief moment to remember his life and his sacrifice, down in my district, members of his family, his law enforcement colleagues, and community members are gathering in Riverside County for his memorial services and burial. There, those who knew him will remember his devotion to family, his sense of humor, and his dedication to community and country. I hope you will join me in paying respects to his family for his honorable sacrifice and extend to them our sincerest condolences. Thank you, members.
Colonel Cook.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I also want to join my colleague, just say a couple of words about something that's somewhat ironic. You look up at the clock right now. It's 10 o'clock. Right now, they're starting the ceremony for this young man. And, you know, far too often we do adjourn in memories of people that, they're always in the newspapers or they're on the news or what have you. This is a young man that probably very, very few people outside of the Marine Corps and maybe the police culture and maybe his own personal friends knew. He was one of the troops. He went to war twice, got wounded. He was at the same base I was at, where I actually retired. Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center, 29 Palms, 2nd Battalion, 7th Marines. He wasn't an officer. He wasn't a colonel behind a desk. I shouldn't say that because I don't think I spent that. They didn't trust me behind a desk. But he was in the sand. He was doing his job. He wasn't getting the notoriety. And what does he do? He leaves the Marine Corps and he goes on to more public service as a troop, defending people. And in this tragic, not an accident, he was doing his job, chasing somebody that had stolen a car, and obviously a horrible crash that resulted in his death. You know, this is about somebody that far too often I think we forget to recognize these individuals that in many ways, in terms of the media, are insignificant. But in terms of what they do for us as citizens, are true heroes. Please join with me, as I said, at this hour, and think of this young man at 1400, 2 o'clock, as they will have the interment ceremony at Riverside National Memorial Cemetery. Thank you.
Mr. Amiano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I requested adjourn in memory for Caroline Marks, the widow of former State Senator Milton Marks and a political figure in her own right. She recently died at an assisted living facility in San Francisco. Mrs. Marks, who had suffered from multiple illnesses, was 89. Mrs. Marks, who had training as an economist and took particular interest in health issues, had formidable political skills. She was an invaluable advisor and sounding board for her husband and helped him over his long career in public office, which included serving San Francisco for 38 years in the State Assembly and Senate as a moderate Republican and then a Democrat. Marks was a dogged campaigner with a famous personal touch. He attended weddings, birthdays, celebrations, and parades, but was best known for sending congratulatory messages to his constituents. He was said to have sent out over 50,000 letters a year. However, the letters from Marks were the work of his wife. She was the one responsible for clipping the notices in the papers and sending letters on my dad's behalf, said Mrs. Marks' son, Milton Marks III. As her husband's political career was winding down, Mrs. Marks entered the political arena herself as a candidate for San Francisco Board of Supervisors in 1996. She then served on the City Commission on the Status of Women and was active in health issues. She often said that one of her most important victories, however, was getting the Richmond Branch Library named in honor of her husband, who died in 1998. Mrs. Marks was born Caroline Wachenheimer in Providence, Rhode Island, and graduated from Bryn Mawr College in 1943. She then went on to work as an economist with the State Department in Washington on the understanding that she would lose her job when the men returned from World War II. She also served as an economist with the United Nations when the United Nations was formed in San Francisco in 1945, and later worked for the UN in New York. She returned to San Francisco and married Milton Marks in 1955. She is survived by her two sons, Milton Marks III of San Francisco, who serves as a trustee on the Community College Board, and David Marks of Mountain View, a daughter, Carol Marks of Sacramento, and 7 grandchildren. I respectfully request an adjournment in her memory.
Okay, thank you, members. Please bring the names to the desk to be printed in the journal. The session schedule is as follows. Saturday, March 26th, floor session upon call of the Speaker. Sunday, March 27th, floor session upon call of the Speaker. Monday, March 28th, holiday, Cesar Chavez Day. Tuesday, March 29th, floor session at 12 noon. Wednesday, March 30th, floor session upon call of the Speaker and check-in session. And Thursday, March 31st, floor session at 9 a.m. I am ready to entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Allen moves. Ms. Conway seconds that this House stands adjourned until Tuesday, March 29th at noon, or upon call of the Speaker. Quorum call is lifted.